Pew, 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 pew. Okay, hi everyone. I just did a coding challenge where I programmed this game from scratch using the p5.js library in JavaScript. And in a moment, I'm going to travel back into time, and you're going to watch that coding challenge. This is the end result. I'm doing this after I actually did it, recording this part. The reason why I'm doing that is I want to mention something to you. I want to tell you about Suraj's channel, Surajology. Suraj makes video tutorials about machine learning. And now that I've done this coding challenge, I'm going to pass this game off to Suraj, and Suraj is going to train a bot to play it and get a high score. Now the game doesn't actually have the score features yet. I'm going to add that in later. So check this video's description for a link to Suraj's video where the bot plays Asteroids and hopefully plays it much better than I ever could. So now I'm going to go back into time and start this coding challenge, which will happen in two parts. The first part will just be programming the asteroids and the ship, and the second part will be the lasers. Pew, pew, pew. Nobody likes that I'm saying pew, pew, pew in the chat. They're really upset, which is only making me do it more, which is kind of a problem. Enjoy the video. Enjoy the coding challenge. See you at the end, or in the next one. Bye. All right, here we are. I'm going to start programming asteroids from scratch. Not entirely from scratch, because I'm going to use a framework called p5.js that has a lot of hooks in it for drawing and animation. But the actual game mechanics I'm going to just sort of figure out on the fly. I haven't done this before, and we'll see what happens. If you want to know how long this takes, just look at how long this video is, and then you'll know. But I don't know, because I can't time travel into the future, although if someone could figure that out for me, it would be very helpful for a lot of things I need. Okay, let's go. This is the game Asteroids, and here we go. So the first thing that I need to do is I think I should program the spaceship, the thing that's in the center of the screen that you can kind of like turn and then push around. So what I'm going to do that is I'm going to create a ship object, and the framework that I'm using is called p5.js, which has a lot of things that will allow me to draw the triangle pretty easily, but it also has a vector object built into it. So something that I want this ship to have is a position. And I'm going to have that position start at the center of the screen, which is width divided by 2 and height divided by 2. And then I'm going to write a function called render, where I draw the ship as a triangle. So how do I draw a triangle? There's a function in P5 called triangle, and all I need are 3 xy coordinates. So what I could do is draw a triangle like this. If I think of this as like 0, 0, then this could be like 5, 5. This could be like -5, 5, and this could be like -5, 0. So that would give me 3 coordinates of the triangle, but maybe these shouldn't be 5. That should be a variable that has to do with the size of it. So I'm going to come back over here, and I am going to now add this dot r equals 10. And I'm going to say a triangle is 3 points. What am I looking over there? Negative this dot r, negative this dot r, this dot r. A lot of this dots. This dot r, this dot r. And then 0, negative this dot r. So what I want now is to create a variable. This is just to get the ship, called ship. And then I'm going to say ship equals new ship. This calls this constructor function and creates an object that has a position, an r value, and a function called render. So I can now say ship.render, and I can run this code, and we'll see what we've got. Look, there's a nice little triangle, but it's up there in the top left corner because I didn't actually use the position. So something I can do in P5 is I can say translate. The translate function translates the coordinate system by an x and a y value. Vectors have an x and a y value. So I can say translate by x and a y, which essentially will position the ship now where it actually is. So I now have that triangle there. I could make it a little bit bigger. I could also say no fill and stroke 255. This says don't fill the interior of the triangle and give the stroke a white stroke. And now I have a nice little triangle right there in the center. Excellent. So now what do I need to do? I need to be able to figure out a way that when I press the right arrow key and the left arrow key, the triangle rotates. So let's figure that out. The ship rotates. So one thing I should probably add here is a variable called, I could call it angle, but I'm going to call it heading. So I'm going to say its heading is 0. And before I draw the triangle, after I translate, I'm always going to rotate by this dot heading. So we can see now that's that. Now what if I change the heading to 90 degrees? Will it be pointed to the right? That's not exactly right. It's not pointed to the right because P5 and most computer graphics environments think in terms of radians, which is a different unit of measurement than degrees. So to the right, 90 degrees is pi divided by 2 radians. So I can actually say pi divided by 2, and you can see now there it is, it's pointing to the right. So that's the heading. Now what I want, the heading is something arbitrary. I can start it at 0 for right now. So what I want to do is I need to be able to rotate it. So I need another function, and I'll call it this dot turn. Now, one thing about these functions, JavaScript's a funny place with object-oriented programming, and objects have this thing called a prototype. So this isn't the best way, and I've gotten comments about this, to just put these functions in the constructor function itself. Some people like to put them, but just for sort of ease of use and readability right now, I'm just putting the functions in here. This dot turn equals function. So I can say, maybe this needs an angle value that it turns by, and I say heading plus equals angle. So anytime I call this function this dot turn, anytime I call this function ship dot turn, it'll turn the ship. So for example, if in the draw loop, P5 has a draw loop that animates over and over again, if I were just to say ship dot turn 0.1, we can see, okay, heading is not defined. This dot. Always forget this dot. This dot, so I think, where did I forget that? This dot heading plus equals angle. There we go. Now I have my ship spinning. Yes, OK. But I don't want it to just spin randomly. I want to spin if I am pressing the right arrow key. So now I need to go back to my code, and I need to add a key pressed function. Now P5 allows you to have these kind of global event handlers. One of them is function key press. So anytime I press a key, this function will happen. And what I want to do here is just check if the key code is right arrow ship dot turn by 0.1, else if the key code is left arrow ship dot turn negative 0.1. OK, that's pretty good, right? So now I'm going to turn off this turning that's happening in draw. I'm going to hit refresh. And now when I press the right key, it turns. When I press the left key, it turns. This is kind of terrible. I can't hold down the key to turn it. I have to press it one at a time. So we're going to have to change how this works. And actually, there's a sort of a funny way I could do this. I'm going to make a global variable. I could probably package this in the object a bit better. And actually, I'm going to. I'm going to make a variable in the object called this dot rotation and set it equal to 0. And this dot turn actually just always turns it by that rotation amount. And then I'm going to say this dot set rotation is a function that receives an angle, and then this dot rotation equals that angle. So now what I want to do is when I press the key, I want to set the rotation. When I release the key, I want to unset it. Because I want to be able to I want to handle the key pressed and released differently. So now I can say here, set rotation 0.1, set rotation negative 0.1, and if I add an event for key released, now I can say ship dot set rotation 0. So now this should, it didn't work. So what did I miss? I've got a bug here. It was a nice idea, right? Oh, you know what I forgot to do? I forgot to call ship.turn. So I always have to turn it. I might be turning it by 0 sometimes, but the function turn is always happening in the draw loop. Sketch 11 shiz, which is ship. OK, so now, there we go. So now as I hold the key down, it turns. OK, there we go. It's turning as I hold it down. Now, the next thing I need to do is I need to be able to move it. So when I press the up arrow, I want to apply a force in the direction that it's pointing. Let's think about how I'm going to do this. So in other words, here's my ship. let's say it's pointing in this particular direction. So I have this particular angle as this variable heading. So what I need to do is I want it to have a velocity that's moving in that direction. So I need to add two concepts to the ship. I need to add the concept of a velocity, which changes its position, but I also need to add this concept of an acceleration. I don't actually, the acceleration is the thing that changes the velocity. So when I press up, which is like a boost, thrust or boost onto the ship, it's like a force that pushes it and it starts to move. So let's see how we can add that. Both of those things will also be vectors. So if I go back to the code, boy, Asteroids is much more complicated than I imagined. Still only on the ship. This dot velocity equals create vector 0, 0. I want to add a function called update, which is always updates whatever this object is doing. And I'm going to say this dot position add this dot velocity. So if I were to run this, you can see, oh wait, first of all, I always make this, always forget this. I've got to actually call now ship.update. OK, now if I hit refresh, it's not doing anything. But what if I give it a velocity? Create vector 1, 0. So its velocity is a vector pointing to the right, 1, 0. Now if I hit refresh, there it is, it's moving. Now it's not pointing in the direction that it's moving. So many problems here. But we're going to fix all of those things. The idea here is that the velocity just starts at 0, but instead of assigning it a value, I'm going to push it. So I need some sort of function that's like this dot boost. And when I boost it, what do? I add something to the velocity. So I need a vector that points in the direction that it's pointing. And I know the direction based on an angle. So I need to get a vector, an x and a y, based on that angle. Fortunately for us, p5 as a framework has a function to create a vector from an angle. I could do it manually using sine and cosine and trigonometry, and I have other videos that show that. But if I just come over here, I can say var force equals p5.vector.fromAngle heading. So this will give me a vector that points in the direction of that heading. And I can now say this dot velocity dot add force. So now I need to add else if key code equals up arrow. That'll be my key for boosting it. Ship.boost. So let's see how this goes. Now if I press the up key, heading is not defined. I forgot that this. I should have to put a quarter in a jar every time I forget this in working in an object in JavaScript, and then I would be wealthy, except for the fact that those would be my own quarters, so it wouldn't really work. But whatever. I just said wealthy in this very fancy way. I don't know. Anyway, so now if I hit the up arrow, heading is not defined. Sketch.js line 41. Did I not hit save? I must not have hit save. There we go. Now, you notice it's working, but it's not pointing in the right direction. So this is a silly problem because I drew a triangle kind of like pointing up, but a rotation of 0 is pointing to the right. So I kind of just need to adjust everything. I probably could have drawn the rectangle oriented to the right. But I can just fix this in my code with one little line that just says rotate heading plus pi divided by 2. That should rotate it always offset by 90 degrees. And if I do this, you can see I am now pushing it around like asteroids. Now you can't see what keys I'm pressing, but left, 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 right, right, up, up. So one thing I want to add is a little bit of dampening or friction, just to make it a little easier for me to play right now. And also it's an interesting thing to see. In the update function, what I'm going to do is always say this dot velocity dot multiply by 0.95. So I just want to reduce the velocity, the magnitude of that vector, by 5% every frame. And you'll see what that does. So as I accelerate, it kind of slows down and stops. Now, I'm doing it too much. The other thing is I can't hold down the up key. So I have to do the same exact thing that I did with turning. I need to handle that in ship. So what I'm going to do is say ship.boosting true. I'm going to change this and I'm going to say ship.boosting false. And I'm going to create a variable called this dot this dot is boosting equals false. And then I'm going to write the function this dot boosting, which gets a Boolean value as an argument. And I'm going to say this dot is boosting equals b. So I can, and then in update, I think I can just do this in update. I'm just going to say, always say this dot boost. So it's always, oh, no, if it's boosting. If this is boosting, then update's already always being called. So I basically want to turn boosting on and off. Boost is totally the wrong word. I think the word is thrust. But whatever, it doesn't matter. You get the idea. OK, so I think this is exciting. Ooh, I think this is going to work. Let's see. Oh, my God. So now I can hold, oh, whoa. OK, it went really fast. So now I need to deal with the fact that because I can hold it down, that force is much too strong. So I'm going to say force.multiply by 0.5. So I'm going to reduce its magnitude by half. Actually, I'm going to reduce it by 90% just to sort of see. So you can see I can now hold the mouse down, and it has that, and turn it around. So it's essentially like drive it around the screen. The friction is too much, though. I just wanted to have a little bit of dampening. So I'm going to say multiply by 0.99. There we go. So I've got asteroids here, pretty much. I've got the core mechanic now down of driving this triangle around the screen. This is totally fun. OK, now, what do I need to do? Boy, there's a lot left to do. I need to add actual asteroids. I also need to deal with the fact that this should wrap around. That's kind of an easy problem. Let's add that real quick. So I should add a function called this.edges equals function. Oh, this is going to be so tedious. And I want to say if this.pos.x is greater than a width plus minus this.r. So I just want to kind of like, if it's, no, plus r, if it's like all the way off the screen, then have its position equal negative r. Else if this.pos.x is less than negative this.r, then have its position get reset to the other side of the screen, right? So this should do it for x. Whoops. Let's drive off this side. Oh, I do this every time. When you write a function, you need to actually call it for anything to ever happen. So in draw, I now also want to say ship.edges. Let's see if that works now. Whoops. And drive off the screen. And I got an error. I forgot this dot. Where did I forget this dot? In my edges function, this.r. And this.r. I don't need this.width, right? Because width refers to the width in the sort of global sense of the canvas. But r is part of this ship object. So now I can drive off the edge, and here I come back. So asteroids kind of like, we would see it in both places in fancier ways and stuff. Now I just need to implement this for the top and the bottom. Height and y and y and y and height. So now I can drive off the top, the side, and I can like turn around and slow myself down. So I can drive around. This is fun. I really got to not get distracted and keep playing the game. OK, it's time. Let's add some asteroids. Now, one thing I don't love here is that my code is getting to be a little bit unwieldy. So I want to take this whole ship constructor function, and I'm going to add a new file. And I'm going to call it ship.js. And I'm going to put the whole ship constructor function there. I'm going to make a new file called asteroid.js. Because I want all the code for the asteroids, things that are flying around, I want to put there. And then what I need to do is in my index.html file, I need to make sure that I am also referencing ship.js and asteroid.js. So I haven't done anything that should change the way this program works. I just reorganized my code a little bit. I feel good about that. How do you feel about that? Are you still watching? Maybe. I feel like I've been doing this for hours. It probably hasn't been that long. OK, so now asteroids. So the first thing I need to deal with is the fact that unlike the ship, where there's just one of them, I'm going to need many asteroids flying around the screen. So I need to say var asteroids equals bracket bracket, because I want it to be an array being a list of things as opposed to one thing. And then what I want to do, just to get started, I want to say asteroids.push new asteroid. Push being a function that adds something to an array, and I forgot 2 parentheses there. So I need to add an asteroid to that list. And then in the draw loop, I is less than, I want a loop. Now, one of the other comments I get constantly on my channel is, why don't you use a for each loop? And maybe someday I will. But I'm just kind of, I'm like old and not very good at this, and I'm just sort of used to these kind of loops with iterating over an index. So someday I'll add a for each loop in JavaScript to some of these, but right now I'm just going to do this. So I'm going to do asteroids index_i.render. So notice this is a technique that I often employ. I haven't actually written any of the code for the asteroid. I'm just imagining what I need. I need an array, I need to make a new one, and then I need to loop through all of them and add and call render. So now this gives me kind of a template for what I need to write in this asteroid.js JavaScript file. I need to write a constructor function called asteroid. I also want the asteroid to have a position, create vector. And you know what? The position for right now will just be a random spot, random width, random being a p5.js function that gives me a random number between 0 and some value like width or height. And then I need a render function, which is something that I'll draw. Now, what I'm going to do right now, just for the, what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to call this, I'm going to say translate this.pos.x, this.pos.y, and I'm just going to write, I'm just going to draw a circle. 0, 0, and you know what? We need an r as well. This.r equals 50. And then I'm going to say this.r times 2, because the ellipse function wants a diameter. So to draw a circle. So the radius times 2 is the diameter. So let's see how this goes. Where's my asteroid? There it is. Here's one asteroid, and it's a circle. I can hit refresh, and it should. I must have something wrong with my random. Because look, it seems to be off the screen. Let's take a look at that. Random width, random height. Oh, I know what the problem is. I meant to talk about this, but I forgot. So here's the thing. These translates build on each other. So the ship is translating and rotating the triangle. The asteroid is now translating the ellipse. So that asteroid is actually being drawn relative to the ship's location, and I can show you what I mean like this. I got to get it to appear. Look, as I move. Now that's kind of interesting, but it's not what we want. So one thing I need to add are these functions that are in P5 that are the functions push and pop. So push is going to save the current translation and rotation state, and pop is going to restore it. So if I put push and pop around it, it makes all this translate rotate for the triangle, not affect the other thing. And you can see now, and it also actually the styles. So you can see now the asteroid is being positioned, randomly. Now, let me go back to here, the asteroid, and I also need to add that to here, because there's going to be a lot of asteroids, and I want them to be independent from each other. And I'm also going to say stroke 255, no fill. OK, so now what I want to do, even though I could just keep going, I think it would be really good for us to sort of procedurally generate random asteroids that have that jaggedy look from the original Asteroids game. I could make this game just with the circles, but in some ways that defeats the point of what I want to do. So I know the whiteboard's not the greatest today, but I'm going to come over here and just briefly explain how I'm going to do this. So I'm drawing a circle with the function ellipse. Another way I could draw a circle is by setting all the points of a circle as vertices, and then connecting them as one polygon. And you can see this is like a bit less of a high resolution circle. But if I move these points around a little bit, then I can also make something that appears more jaggedy. So how do I get these points? I need to do something called polar to Cartesian coordinate transformation. And I have another video that I think that goes through that in detail, or if I don't, I better make one and link to it from here. But really what I just need to do is think of each one of these spots as an angle from the center and a distance from the center, radius, and then I need to convert that to an xy with a little bit of trigonometry. So time to review your trigonometry. Pause this video and go read about trigonometry if you're watching it. OK, so what I'm going to do here is I'm going to take out this ellipse, and I'm going to write a for loop. Yet again, I'm going to say a equals 0. Actually, I'm going to say I equals 0. I'm going to use I equals 0. I is less than, I don't know, let's just use 10 points. I plus plus. I can use the p5 map function to get an angle. So I want to take I, which goes from 0 to 10, and I want to get an angle that's between 0 and 2 pi, 2 pi being the equivalent of 360 degrees. Then I want to say var x equals this dot r times cosine of that angle. This is the polar to Cartesian coordinate. The polar coordinate is r comma angle. The Cartesian coordinate is x comma y, named for René Descartes, the mathematician. Var y equals sine of the angle. And then what I can do is I can set a vertex at that x and y position. Okay? And now, in addition to that, what I'm going to do is say begin shape. So I want to create an arbitrary shape out of vertices. This list of vertices, all with their x, y, end shape. And we're going to see what this gives me. So you can see it. There it is. It's kind of like a circle, but it's a little more jaggedy. And notice how it's not connected at the end. So an easy way for me to do that in p5 is just to add this close function, which will tell the shape to close itself at the end. The other thing that I think would be interesting to do is have this be flexible. So each time I do it, I have a different number. I have sort of a different resolution. So I'm going to do a variable called total, which is a random number between, let's say it could be between 5 and 15 points. So this is going to say this dot total, and this would now be this dot total. So sometimes it'll have a few vertices, sometimes it'll have a lot. So you can see I'm getting different ones. And now, you know what would be much better is if I stopped, right now in the sketch, what I should just do here is add a bunch of them. So let's add 10 of them at the beginning. And now, so I don't have to, we can see there's a whole bunch of them, all with a different amount of vertices. Now the other thing I should do is make the size of them variable. So I'm also going to say this dot r equals a random number, I don't know, between 5 and 25. That didn't work. This dot r, oh, that's in the ship. I changed the ship size, which should be fixed. And I want the asteroid itself to have a random value between 15 and 50 it looks like a good sort of maximum size. So now you can see, and this is too many. I want to start it with fewer. So let's just start it with 5. OK, so we can see here's now a bunch of asteroids. Now here's the thing. These don't look like the asteroids in Asteroids. So how am I going to make them jaggedy and more interesting looking? What I believe I can do is I can actually, let's see, how am I going to do this in the asteroids? What I can do is offset r each time by some random value. But I need it to be the same random values each time. So there's a bunch of ways I could do this, but I'm going to make this an array. And I need how many? I need however many points I have, I need that many offsets. So this dot offset equals a random amount. So when I create the object, I make an array of offsets for each one of those vertices. And let's say it's between like -5 and 5. I might want to make it bigger. And then now the x and y is plus this dot offset index I. And you know what, let me make this a little simpler to read. I'm going to just make another variable. The r is actually this dot r plus the offset for each one. And now here's the polar to Cartesian coordinate transformation. Dun, dun, dun. OK, I hope this works. Oh boy, I'm going to be excited if it does. If it looks like asteroids. Total is not defined. This dot total. Where's total not defined? This dot total. Oh, I don't see any asteroids. This dot offset index I see in the chat. Somebody is, yes, I need an index I here. I need to set each spot in the array. Whoops. There we go. That's looking kind of better. So you can see these look kind of more like asteroids. We can make the offset much more extreme. Yeah, this is better. So now I've got something that looks much more like those procedurally generated asteroids. So now these asteroids, by the way, I can still drive around, right? The whole point is to drive around and not hit the asteroids. They're a little bit big. I don't know if I'm making this game too hard to play, but the asteroids should move, right? I need the asteroids now to move around the screen. So they need an update function. And the same thing, I could just say this.position.add this.velocity. Only they don't have a velocity, so let me give them a velocity. This.velocity equals, and p5 has a function to create a random vector. So a vector of length 1 pointing in a random direction. So I can just say random2D to give me a random vector. If I go to sketch.js, I can say asteroids index I.update. And here we go. There we go. Now the asteroids are moving around. Oh, the asteroids also need to when they leave, to come back. So one thing I can probably do is just reuse this edges function. I could do some kind of fancy object-oriented inheritance thing, but I'm just going to take this exact function and yeah, I could use the same function and assign it to both, but I'm just going to copy paste it right now. Then I'm going to go to sketch.js and say asteroids.edges. Okay, there we go. Now I've got the asteroids moving around. And now all I need to do, boy, am I not finished yet? Oh yeah, I have no collision detection. So I'm definitely not going to add collision detection to this today. Because, whatever, asteroids, they're in different z space and they pass through each other in a sort of magical sense. And what happened to my ship? There it is. But I should add a feature where I can now fire little lasers at the asteroids and break them apart.